Welcome to the Running on Grass podcast. As always, I'm your host, Logan Prebino, here with my partner, Ea'Mon O'Toole. How are we doing today, Ea'Mon?
I'm doing good. How are things out in Nebraska, Logan?
We're looking dry, but it's beautiful. We're in a wet pattern. It is raining. It's just not in the quantity that we need.
Well,
How
that's
are
a start.
things out west?
That's better than the nothing you were getting before.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, we've had enough decent rains come through. We're kind of in a funky little area from I-80 south. It's looking pretty good. I-80 north in Wyoming looks really tough. Most of the places I've been anyways, following the high school track schedule around. But now that we have finished track season, I'm hoping to stay a little closer to home. So, but no, I was just visiting with my neighbor. We're 3 inches better today than we were a year ago this time.
Wow, lucky you.
So we've caught a few good ones. Valley looks green, and we're all pretty excited that we've got enough to start a summer and hopefully can keep going.
Well, this is a Friday happy hour special. We're recording it late on a Friday, as it were, this time of year. Would you want to tease these guys? Let them know what we're going to talk about during this episode of our Friday happy hour special.
Yeah, this looks like a good one as usual. We've been kicking ideas back and forth over the last week of things that we think will be good to visit about. And we're going to talk about some USDA numbers. We're going to talk about what ground beef's doing, different marketing opportunities, and what this current system we're in looks like, and drought pressures, which I think is just something that we need to stay on top of as far as the whole country in general's in drought, even the guys in Florida. So, and then I've got some ideas. I'm going to do grazing versus hay ground, and I want to hear what you got going on with your farming stuff out there in Nebraska. And then one of the big ones is cow herd and replacement strategy. So what are you thinking you're going to do? What am I going to do? And we'll bounce around and talk about that too.
Yeah, I think that last one's going to be a popular one. You know, how are we riding this market and positioning ourselves? No one knows what the future entails. We're just guessing, but I bet these people want to hear what we're guessing. So anyway,
Yeah.
Topic number one. So USDA cattle on feed, the first plus 2% year over year increase in 18 months. What does that mean?
I think what we saw with the cattle on feed report was shocking in some ways, but in other ways not surprising at all, because we had just had those huge numbers, as we talked about on one of the earlier podcasts, with 9,000 head of cattle, which was everything from pairs, singles, little calves, and a lot of yearlings. And I think a lot of those yearlings that were going to go out on grass just went right to a yard, and that happened all over the United States.
So a forced drought liquidation, and inevitably it lands in a feed yard.
Yeah, yeah. So all those numbers, I can tell you, like I just said about Wyoming, it's tough out there. You go to eastern Wyoming, and I've never seen a tougher bit of country in my life. So that's going to be a real monster, and why so many cattle went through Torrington the other day because of how droughty it is. So when you look at, I think it was 6,400 head of yearlings out of the 9,000 that went through Torrington that day. Those are all the same thing, and I just went through my group of whatever I've got open, and I'm doing the same thing. I'm like, get them out of here. I'm doing better than many people in terms of grass, but that doesn't mean I'm doing so. I'm not wanting to waste any grass either.
So you don't think this is the increased supplies? It's just drought-forced liquidation.
Yeah, I think short-term bearish, long-term bullish.
You might want to call the boys in Chicago.
Yeah, if you're like, yeah, that was a train ticket, you might get out of here.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen the market really tumble here this week. I got a substantial chunk of my margin call back. A substantial chunk.
That's exciting for you, because I know that those margin calls, those guys kind of bend you guys at the knees sometimes.
Yeah, they can, but we're back, baby.
We're back in the game. Oh, that's great. And then we've got 6% versus last year on the April replacements. Yeah.
Which is also, interesting. Also drought forced, you think?
I think everything right now is drought forced.
Yeah.
I think that is the real pusher in every number we're seeing across the country is there is an underlying tone of drought.
Yeah. What did you think about marketing's down 10% year over year? I thought that was crazy.
Yeah, and I went to one of those feed yards here a while back, and boy, the cattle are big.
Yeah.
They're so big, and that's just it. And they said it. I went to the USMEF meeting here last week in Oklahoma City, and great meeting. There was a morning where they had Daryl Peel and Don Close and Neville Spear all up on a panel, and it would have been worth flying out there just to
Yeah.
hear this hour, 2 hours that they talked. And if it was 2 hours, it felt like an hour. It was really great, and they just talked about how our prime numbers have surpassed our choice numbers.
Yeah.
So we've got higher prime than we do choice in the system right now. And that's just shocking to me because I remember growing up and it was like, man, prime, that is like the cream of the crop. And now you've got this A5 Wagyu and all tons of these prime options because they're trying to figure out how to market all these my prime versus your prime.
Yeah, there's too much prime, and the the Hales newsletter that I read, he's talking about total collapse in the demand premium to where CAB prime and choice are all within neck and neck against each other because there's so much prime and CAB upper choice out there that it's not commanding premium right now.
Yeah. And then you have everybody mad that we're bringing in all these imports of lean beef. That's why. It's because there is way too much choice in prime, and that doesn't make a good burger on the grill. When it comes down to the
Yeah.
consumer that grills it in the park with their family on Saturday, that is the ultimate consumer, and that's who we're all working for.
Yeah. So ground beef's hitting $7 a pound or $7 a pound retail. Is that sustainable?
Not with $5-6 diesel.
No, yeah. I think that the consumer sentiment I was reading is worse than it was in 2008 and 2009, and the stock market's just ripping.
Yeah. I don't know what we do to hold on to the consumer today because of oil. We were pushing them before, and we pushed them to the brink, and then the oil pinched them so hard they said, "All right, we're done buying beef, or at least the quantity that we were, because now we have to put that to keep our car running to get to work."
Yeah, it's definitely hitting beef demand in what I've been reading.
Yeah, my interest, I guess I've just been chewing on how do we curb this so that we don't have something happen, the flip side of what happened in the 70s, where we were losing so much. There was not a consistent product. There was too much lean, all the different issues that we all know about in the beef industry. And how do we not create that same problem on an inverse of what happened in the 70s? We got too much fatty beef, really. People don't eat that much steak. They love burger, but they don't eat the same quantity of steak. So how do we curb that consumer so that they don't quit us when we've come up with such a great product and did everything that they asked us to do in the 70s, which we want a consistent product, we want to taste good, we want this, that, and the other. We've done that, but now we've made it too expensive for them.
Yeah, I again, I hit on it last week, but high prices solve high prices. And that's true in corn, cattle, beef, uh, diamonds, for example.
Yeah, yeah, the diamond guys have taken a beating too.
Yeah. It turns out when you can just manufacture them, they're not as valuable.
Right, right. Well, I wish I would have known that when I bought my wife her engagement ring.
Yeah. Uh, I, some of the stuff I've read, we're finally seeing that shift away from beef into the alternative proteins. We're going to call them alternative proteins now because beef is king, right?
That's right. Well, I'm seeing different places where they're trying to make it so it is illegal to have. I'm trying to think of the right way to put it, but basically the fake meat is illegal to put on the shelves because they're saying it's not healthy. And this is RFK stuff. He's
Right.
saying, I it's not safe, it's not good. We want real protein, not fake protein.
Yeah, watching Impossible, their stock market crumble, I rarely take pleasure in other people's failures, but them and their, poison alternative to beef, I am enjoying watching it fall. It's been quite a spectacular fall too.
I feel the same about it, and a couple different reasons. One, you had some of the big four, some of those guys were investing in these companies because they thought there was going to be opportunity for that. So I love seeing that cattle and are still holding up their end of the bargain, and that the fake meat guys are taking the tumble. The other thing I really hated about the fake meat guys being on the Wyoming Beef Council, everything that we put out has to be verified, has to go through USDA. We can't has to be fact checked, and it can't combat against anyone talking negatively about our product. So
Yeah.
when it's just not a fair fight, really, except for the cattle are doing their job. That's the only real fair fight we have. And when those guys are coming out trashing beef, how bad it is for you, how bad it is for the environment, and then the cattle did their job.
Yeah. And the people who are just manufacturing things out of seed oils and calling it beef, they deserve to lose.
Absolutely, I'm with you. Absolutely. Well, tell me on. Let's move down here a little bit to some drought pressures. We're just talking about how it just kind of is an underlying tone to everything. Early liquidation, regional supply realities. What are you seeing on your side?
Well, I just you should shared that video with me of the farmer over by Scotts Bluff that's planting 30% of his typical acreage because of drought and water supply shortage.
Yeah, and what he mentioned in that video is that he is planting the other stuff into a grass and gonna. He talks about trying to help out his beef neighbors, or I can't remember exactly how he put it, but basically it was his beef neighbors who were looking for grass. He can plant into grass, which is what we've talked about before. Is are these farmers seeing these opportunities? And apparently, at least that one does.
Yeah, and we keep hitting on it, but it makes perfect sense. When you're short water, don't try to produce the grain. Just produce the forage instead.
Yeah, and in a place like Scottsbluff, Nebraska, those guys know how to handle cattle. Those guys have facilities, and maybe it's a futuristic thing for the rest of the country to start saying, "Hey, my neighbor can do this, and maybe I'll go help my neighbor a little bit and learn how to work cattle." And then, boy, I think we could make enough money at running some cows on our place. And if we're not going to make money on the grains, then let's put in some facilities, and all of a sudden, it'll just roll across into the Midwest, hopefully, and there'll be a little bit more opportunity if we continue to be in this drought and don't have grass for the livestock.
Yeah, I know. If you're a grain farmer looking to diversify into cattle, the timing seems iffy, but it seems like there's an opportunity for partnership at least.
Yeah, and do you see people in your area doing that where they're thinking, okay, let's plant a little grass here?
No, I don't see that at all. It is fairly segmented. You got the grain guys and the cattle guys, and there's not a lot of carryover. And I completely get why that is. Cattle are work. It still requires labor, with the grain. And I'm a full time farmer during, these months. So I'm not throwing shit on anyone, but it's very easy to sit in a tractor massage seat for a few months out of the year. It's a little bit different calving out heifers like TJ was doing. And then, like I said, I'm the full time farmer right now with Joe on, so I'm not throwing shade at anyone. I enjoy it as much as anyone.
I love that. I had not heard throwing shade for, I don't know if I'd ever heard it. And last night I was riding with my kids in the vehicle, and my older son, who's a freshman in high school, he's 15. He said, yeah, they were throwing shade, and I'm like, I know what you're talking about, but that's an interesting way to say I'm not talking shit on anybody.
Yeah. I'm glad I can impress you with my vocabulary
Yeah,
references.
you and my 15-year-old, you guys are cool. Oh, that's awesome. Well,
So I hadn't hit on that. That was pretty much just the panhandle. I drove through. I went to go visit Kuchera for a friend's 40th with some high school friends, college friends. Drove through the Colorado Plains and uh, from Pueblo all the way up to Sterling and then across to Holyoke. So I have a very good frame of reference for how Colorado is looking. And south of Lyman, it is not green. A little bit south, it is green, but man, you get about 20 miles south of Lyman, and the grass is brown, and there is no dead grass to speak of. Like those guys are in a pickle in Colorado on the eastern plains.
Yeah, and they have to pay more than it is in Nebraska to winter a cow. It's like two or two and a half times as much.
Yeah, they put up hay, which a lot of them do, and it's not good productive hay country like up in your valley. So it's can be prohibitively expensive for those producers. And the pastures I saw. So this is late May, and the number of pastures I saw that had cattle out on them were not a lot, and I did not see a lot of cross fencing either. So it's not like they were mob grazing away from the highway. It was pretty sparsely populated.
Oh, it's going to be tough in these places that aren't catching these rains, and that eastern plains of Colorado is a tough place
Those
to
guys are
work.
tough. They're just tough producers.
But you know what the difference between them and me is? When they want to go check their cows, they can see them all on the same visit.
Yeah, the eastern plains of Colorado make the Sandhills of Nebraska look exotic.
Oh my gosh, that's great.
And
Oh,
then, but I'll tell you, as soon as I got north of Lyman, it was raining on us as we were riding up, and as soon as we got to Lyman and north, it was greened up and looking substantially better.
yeah. What do you think the stocking rate adjustments have been down on that part of the world? Do you think that's normal, and those guys just have their cows? You can't see them from the road, kind of thing, or do you think it's they've had significant liquidations?
I think they've had significant liquidation. There's bigger places like Fraser Farms and Lassiter's that we drove by, and I know that they are stocked, and you're not going to see them by the highway. And they looked in better condition. The professionally managed ranches look substantially better than your set stocks sections.
Yeah.
So I think the good well managed ranches are managing through it versus the set stock section that are just praying for relief.
Gotcha. Well, it's it's going to be ugly for a lot of people for a long time unless this thing flips over. They came out of drought last year. They're in more drought this year. Where, when does it end? Where does it end? Does a super El Nino be the
I
kicker that
know.
maybe you finally roll in?
So we're 42% of average right now, which is desolate. And we had the best fall ever, so we look way better than that. But I don't ever remember being this deficit and just being berated with the super El Nino's coming, the mega El Nino's coming, and you're like, man, we need that thing to pop off here in the next 30 days. And it is insane to just experience what you and I are experiencing and everyone across the nation, and then just constant from all fronts saying super El Nino, is imminent.
Yeah, I just saw drought or reel come across my phone of showing the super El Nino rolling into North Dakota, South Dakota, and the amount of moisture they're supposed to get up there in the next week, I think it was, because they're not very good at going much past about a day, but they're trying to get a week out of this one, and it looks kind of tough up there, and they're look like they're going to get a good shot of rain all across South Dakota, North Dakota, and hopefully northeast Wyoming. I have some friends up there. I talked to one of them yesterday, and they are understocked anyways. They're a young couple building a herd, and so they're not stocked to their capacity, trying to get to where they want to be with these high prices, and so they just haven't been able to expand as fast. But she said that's been a great thing because of how dry it is up there, and they haven't had to destock.
Let's tie this all in because we've kind of got this cattle on feed. We've got this Darrow Peel long-term bearish, no, short-term bearish, long-term, no, short-term
bearish,
bearish,
long term.
long term bullish. So this super El Nino hits. What does that mean for prices?
Boy, I think it where we're already in this skyrocketed situation of super expensive cattle. I think that happens on one more level, but nothing. I don't know how much further we can stretch the producer with these interest rates.
Yeah, interest rates are a big part of it. Warsh is in, expected to lower them, especially with consumer sentiment and everything. I can see a scenario, and I think that you were hinting that Don Close and Daryl Peel were talking about it, is there's could be another, very well likely that there is another good run up. And I think Super El Nino does a lot of things. It creates cattle demand on the hoof, not at Chicago, but on the hoof, and it cheapens feed even further, which we know that has an effect on the price. And so I think Super El Nino plays right into Daryl Peel and Don Close's prediction of higher highs coming.
I agree with you. I think those guys are spot on. A lot of people kind of threw shade at them when we put it on X and different platforms of, the conversation. I just threw up a quote by Daryl Peel that day that said, I think that the producer is starting to think about the producer is thinking about having replacement and saying this thing isn't primed for him yet, but they're getting there.
Yeah.
And a lot of people did not want to really accept that or whatever. And they were saying, well, they said that, 14, 15 would last 5 more years than it did and all these things. Well, this is a totally different scenario. And they talked about that on their panel is this is different because of the drought being so widespread and because of, they named 5 different factors, including young people that can't afford to get in and interest rates and, everything that we've brought up in this podcast before. So I just think that that's important to uh, keep track of and listen to those guys that have over 30 years of experience in their job of predicting where we're heading.
Yeah. So the barn price has been strong. There was a new record set for a 7 weight sale this week in the midst of a tumbling feeder cattle market in Chicago. What is the reason that we're seeing that distinction?
I can't quite figure out because some weeks it seems like it's jumping between 6s and 8 weights, and 7's right there, obviously. But I don't know why it's some weeks it's a 6 weight, 7, 8 weight, and they're not ever the same week. I haven't figured that out. What do you think?
I don't know. That's why I asked you.
I
I
can't
mean,
figure it out.
they're not hedgers. The people buying those 7 weights aren't hedgers. You're not going in on the board and hedging in a profit if you're a feed yard right now. So I think it's feeders having cash and looking at the future and thinking the same thing that your guys said, that this thing's going to get even better going forward.
Yeah. Well, I'm zipping through some of their graphs that they should put up the other day. And really, I think one of the things that we haven't talked about here for a bit is Hong Kong, China, and not having them. It sounds like they're going to get back into buying beef, and that's going to be another possible shot in the arm for the beef industry. So, is that why maybe these 7, 8 weights? That's going to the timing of them coming through the system, and when we're going to start sending stuff over to China, and maybe that to me is maybe that why that shot in the arm's coming there.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, it's clearly that there are some optimistic people out there, and blood in the streets tends to, especially in the cattle industry, tends to bring out buyers out of the woodwork. You
Yeah,
know, so a little bit of a discount, and you get that auctioneer going, and the next thing you know, the discount is turned into a premium.
yeah. Like I said, I cleaned out some of the stuff I had around here, and was it the best stuff that Ladder Ranch produces? No, but they were open heifers, nice heifers, 8, 9 weeks. We like to keep a light, small animal here, and they did well, but it was not shooting the moon by any means. on those eights and nine weights that I sent. So I
Do
was
you know what
hoping.
they brought?
Um, I don't have it in front of me, but it was something like I think they averaged around 2650, 2700,
Okay,
something like
yeah,
that. So
yeah,
it worked all right, but it sure, anything you're sending these days, they still bring profit.
yeah. That's true.
So, we do this thing where we raise them out on that, BLM ground that's $1.69 a head a month, and you just
Yeah,
have very. In my operation, we try and the federal land really keeps the things cheap enough that when you start sending stuff in, it may not always be the high highs because our stuff's pretty light because we try to run them out on BLM and grasses that aren't like hay meadow all the time, but we also have very little to do.
yeah, yeah. Your cost structure is, uh, I love it.
I
Very
was
jealous.
I was talking to your main man Braden today about getting my cows trucked back and
Yeah.
trying to do the math and Robert Brocious and I really had a good time with Braden today. We were trying to explain he better have them sorted every pair. Every truck needs to be exactly 35 pairs, and Braden was worked up. I was talking to Robert. I said, "Oh, Braden's calling me." He's like, "Oh, call me back. Let me know what he says." So,
Yeah, that's not the wine glass way is not individual animal attention by in any way, shape, or form.
it was so funny, and I told Robert, I said, when you unload an exact truckload of pears perfectly, and if there's more than two truckloads, it's
Mhm.
gonna they're all gonna mismatch as soon as they
It's a
run
shit
out.
show.
Cow's got to get a drink. Cow's got to fill her belly, and then she'll worry about where that calf is. So putting them perfectly on the truck does not matter in the world I live in either.
No, couldn't exist. I mean, unless you're doing a trailer load.
Yeah. So it was pretty funny to hear Braden, but he did tell me he's like, your cows were probably fatter than you've ever seen them before because the
Yeah, I
grass.
took Chandler out. I took Chandler out, and I told him we as a team at Wineglass we thought that they would lose condition on Sandhills Range when they calved, and so we were very conscious about getting them to body score 6 before they calved on corn stalks when there was down corn and we could cake them easily and had excessive corn, and so we managed them at a 6, which is not usual for us for a cow. We like to be at 5.5 body score for a cow, and then we put them on the Sandhills Range, and they gained weight while calving.
Well, that's probably because they're usually calving on the desert out in the.
Yeah, they're literally just laying on the ground. They're like, I can just eat
Yeah, they've
grass.
never seen that much grass during calving. They usually are like, I had to drop my calf a mile back there to go get a drink of water and come back for my calf, and I got 3 bites of grass along the way.
Yeah, and despite being drought, it was deferred grass. So I mean, they were on really good Sandhills Range. Is
That's
I'm
what
trying to
Chandler
say.
said. He's like, man, those cows, I've never seen them look so fat. And I, in fact, told Braden, I said, seriously, I'm worried that those cows come home, lose weight, and
Mhm.
end up it being tough to get them bred
Yeah,
because they're going to
and we
come in
didn't.
so fat and they've never been this fat before. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with them. But we are going on to the national forest. In my opinion, possibly the best feed in America. It's just we leave more feed up there than most people ever see. So
Yeah, I did.
they
I
should
saw
be
that when you took me up there. I was like, man, you're taking like a third
maybe.
or 20%.
Yeah. Yep.
So yeah,
So
they should do well.
we'll see what this looks like, and that's really we ought to write that down and make sure we hit back on that later in the summer, at least this fall, and say, hey, remember when we came off of corn stalks and we went out into your range, and then we brought them back to Wyoming, went on the national forest with them, and we're going on early. The Forest Service is letting us go on the ground early because of drought and trying to get people, off their meadows or whatever that looks like, or me out of Nebraska, and get them back on the forest, and then we're going to bring them down. We'll preg check in November. So let's try and remember to put that as a reminder to ourselves this fall that we have a conversation about how those cows bred up and what the long term of this big crazy thing that we did with taking them and leaving them in Nebraska, which is we've never done before.
Yeah, I have a feeling that we won't forget to talk about our preg check results.
Yeah.
That might span 4 episodes.
Yeah, well, that I am excited about seeing because I'm cheating a little bit in the data that I will have because of that Halter app being able to tell me what cows, and I'm going to have cowboys living with my cows up in the forest, moving them around, making sure they're with a bull. So yes, it's going to be changed. The data will be possibly different because I'll know who's can be bred, and maybe we have a better breed up than we've ever had. And are we going to attribute it to starting off in Nebraska, or are we going to attribute it to Halter and their app? So
All of the above.
all of the above. Yeah, we did a move this morning on your heifers across the road. So everywhere else we've been, I've just been making these virtual fences. And I sent you a picture yesterday of the line. It was just like having a hot wire there. It was so cool. And but we did one across the road today, so I didn't really want to. If you do it,
How to saddle up your horse?
no, we didn't. It was a pretty big, whopping 17 acres that we moved out of with 800 head this morning, and then went
See,
across
in,
the road.
in Nebraska, at your average ranch, there'd be like 5 guys on horsebacks for a move like that.
We did have a few guys on four-wheelers more because we had other things to do and we didn't have all data kind of.
Oh, you're not supposed to admit that on the podcast.
I know. Ladder Ranch is generally a horseback thing. And my interns actually were a little shocked that I said, no, we'll just bump them over with a four-wheeler.
That's funny.
So with that out part of the deal, we did use the old Hondas, but it was kind of a quick move. Normally it's taking about 4 hours. So if you're thinking, how long is this grass going to last me? And you're like, hey, we got to get off of it and move it right now. Then you need to be thinking probably 2 to 4 hours ahead of time and moving them that much faster. Because if you're thinking we got to get off this grass this second, then just moving them from your phone in town, wherever you're at that you're doing it, that's going to be a longer move than you think it's going to be. It doesn't move them as fast as Polly did so far. It used to be when you went out there on a four-wheeler and you were going to open them up for the next one, 5 minutes. They were lined out, ready to move. And
Why do you think the difference is? Just not picking up on the cues quick enough?
yeah, and how was it when they were at your place?
We moved them. They were on a 1,000-acre deal with no cross fence, and we moved them quarter to quarter. It was really good grass, again, deferred grass, so it was slower because it wasn't like we were grazing it down and moving them. We're like, well, we should probably move them because we want to hit this 1,000 acres before we send them to you. So, yeah, it was slow just because we were leaving good feed.
Yeah, and I'm trying to take about 30% in this first move across.
Because you'll come back in 30 days, right?
It'll be about 30 days, I'm hoping, yeah. So we're leaving a lot of grass. It looks really good. I had water on really early. Like I said, we've had some great storms, getting that natural fertilizer and the nitrogen rainfall. And then the nights are warming up. Days are getting into the 80s, some of them. So we are having some really great grass growing conditions here. And today I left an absurd amount of grass behind. But it's going to look like it could probably be cut as a hayfield here in 30 days.
Because you'll hit it twice with my heifers, and then you'll hit it again with cows.
Right.
I will.
I don't know yet. We'll see what the fall looks like and how much moisture we get. But I will hit it twice with your cattle, and then I will hit it again in the fall. So your cattle will be off of it probably around August, and then I will bring my cows home, and they'll probably hit it in like October. So it'll have a pretty big rest after your cattle get off of it again.
Yeah, this is sub-irrigated stuff, so it's highly productive. Good soils.
And what's interesting is my best field that I have on the ranch, and I did everything less this year. We talked about this before, 80 pounds of fertilizer versus like 230, 280, which I used to do when I was haying it. And I cut it way back, as you said, and you and I talked about this quite a bit on the phone. A little bit goes a long way with fertilizer. So it's better to do a little bit and get something than to just cut it cold turkey and say, grow as you will.
Yeah, UNL has really good data on the utility of fertilizer, and a little bit, and it's a hockey stick up, and then it just really tapers off. And a lot of guys hit the peak, but it's a hump at the peak. And we try to at wine glass and what we were talking about on the phones. That rapid acceleration, we want to be at that where you know you're getting a good ROI.
Hmm. Yeah, and I really enjoy. Uh, so I was going that one field. I grazed it twice with your stuff, and then I came back in the fall, used it for the last 3 weeks of October. Normally, I'm only on for 2 weeks, but I was so droughty last year. I came off a week early of my mountain country, dropped into my meadows. Calves were significantly heavier because they had another week, and we figured they're gaining like 3 pounds a head a day on our meadows. Those calves
Wow.
are, both getting their mother's milk and they're getting this lush hay meadow. And
Right
so,
before you sell them too, when
yep,
those pounds are most
right
important.
before, yep. And so they're getting that. And then that was the third graze on that thing when the grass is technically should be dormant end of October, beginning of November. And that was the very best grass I have right now on my ranch is the places that got the third graze.
Wow.
Yeah.
Just to keep it vegetative, you think?
Mm, man, I I don't have an answer, and I've got 3 university kids here at the ranch that are my interns, and they're measuring grass every day. And she actually said, so listen to this. There's one place that the meadow we left this morning, the grass was 50 inches tall in one place.
What?
And it's some places, yeah.
Wow.
So they're just doing this hoop method, and they're using a
Yep.
yardstick and measuring.
Yep. I'm
And
familiar.
yeah, yardstick 36 inches. She said it was 50 inches.
Wow.
And so, like I said, I left an absurd amount of grass in this last paddock, but I
That is,
cannot figure out why it is so much better because it had the third graze versus the second. Just two, I mean.
yeah, that's unexpected.
Yeah.
But for context, and 80% of our listeners would not understand your valleys. Like it is so dense and the soil is so good. Like when you put a shovel in it, like it's a mat of grass and soil and aggregate, and it's definitely not your typical ranch country. It is highly productive soils, 300 bushel an acre corn soils for my farming friends, where you put 100 units of N on it, maybe 80, to get 300 bushel corn. So it's a highly productive soil, and you were hitting on it. That kind of ground selling for like $10,000 an acre because of its productivity.
Well, I would argue it's not its productivity, because most guys that can afford $10,000 an acre ground are not ranchers that understand productivity of ground. It's because of the mountains that are above it and how pretty it is to look out of your porch every morning.
Yeah, I guess that
But
is
you're right,
accurate.
and it'd be fun when you come out this summer to go out with a shovel and kind of run around while we're looking at stuff, and just it's amazing because you pull it up and it is the biggest clumps of dirt, and it's all got worms and bugs and tons of stuff in it. And we have not managed the way wine glass is managed, that we pay attention to those things. In most of my generation, we're getting there now. Probably from meeting you and people like you that have kind of shown me, this stuff should be measured and it's measurable.
Mm-hmm.
And we're just on the front end of that stuff now. But it shows that the generations before me at least understood it. They didn't want to measure it, but they understood what they were doing. And the soil that we have is, it's not like recovered in the last 10 years that I've been here. I'm not doing a whole lot different than my father did in terms of management, except for on our hay meadows where we're now grazing instead of haying.
Yeah.
But it
So,
always has had cattle on it, in the mass cattle treatments in the fall.
yeah, you incidentally hit all of the soil health principles
Yeah.
on accident. So,
Well, I think they do more than they let on.
yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah. Hey, what are you thinking you're going to do on selling anything? Are you going to go your traditional route, or are you going to sell things private treaty? What kind of ideas are you thinking for marketing your livestock?
That's a great question. Had a conversation about it with Robert here recently, and we're gonna do a lot more barn sales, less video sales going forward. There are a number of reasons for that, and there are a number of other operators that are doing that. Rush Creek Land and Livestock, one of the largest ranches in the Panhandle, went to barn sales exclusively a few years ago, away from the videos. Maddox has their stalker special. the day after the Bassett barbecue sale. And the reason for that is, less sort off management, better sorting in the barn, better fill management with grass and water, and we're moving away from the video and to the barn, and what you see is what you get is what I'm thinking, and I think there are a lot of larger operations that are moving that direction. What are you guys seeing?
Well, first off, I'm going to, just for our new listeners that haven't listened to any previous podcasts, Robert that he's talking about is the manager of Maddox Cattle Company in Imperial, Nebraska, and really smart guy. He's been around the block a little bit. He's done his own thing. He's worked for other people, and he's seen the ups and downs of all of it. So, good friend of mine, good friend of Logan's. A little shout out to Robert and Maddox's. And I guess my first question when you were explaining that is, all of us, when we're choosing who we're going to rep our cattle through or who's going to mess with our stuff, what are those percentages that you're going to have to pay them? What are the commissions? So is the barn commission more or less than Superior or Ogallala or Western Video or something like that?
It is at least double.
Okay.
This is a little bit older data, but I think it's at least double to sell them in the barn.
And do you think that the prices are good enough at the barn to eat up that added double?
Yep, I think particularly the sort off management, in particular, where you get another chance at them, they get to sort them up by weight class. It's better for the buyer. I think we're giving value to the feedlot.
But Logan, we're the seller.
I know, but I like to keep my buyers happy. We have repeat buyers, and you can't be Ea'Mon. You know this, like you can't sell buku loads of yearlings and rip people off because there's only I don't know 50 big players in the field, and so you screw 50 people over, and guess what you're gonna find.
And they all know each other.
Yeah, and they all know me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Wine glass cattle. It's not like it's something a little bit more anonymous.
That's right. Well, reputation is so important in our business because, I'll throw a shout out to the sheep here. You think the cattle business is small? Wait until you get in the sheep world.
I can only imagine.
But it's very much the same, and I get it. It's very interesting. I'm gonna sell some of my stuff back to Jorgensen's.
Mm-hmm.
We're doing this deal where we're leasing their bulls, and we've got some really great cows, and we've gotten some great cows from Jorgensen's. And so we're going to sell some of those calves back to Jorgensen's, and they're going to put them through their bull program. I'm pretty excited to see what those bulls end up growing up to be. I raised my own bulls for a long time, and we made some pretty spectacular bulls that work great for high elevation, could work in any country, rocks down to hay meadows. I always felt like our bulls could do it all, and they could pap 34s, 35s all day long, which is pretty incredible for one operation and just throw 30s all the time. And I measured my bulls a couple times, and it was pretty neat. But then we got away from doing our own bull thing, went to Jorgensen's, and so now we're selling them some of those calves back, and that's going to be a unique first time opportunity for me. So I'm interested to see how this works for me.
We'll talk about added value. That partnering up like that, and on the genetic front, and selling Jorgensen genetics back to them.
Yep.
That's the most value you can have.
Yeah, and I'll absolutely say they have all these really cool riders. Like, hey, they're gonna pay to get them DNA tested, and then let's see what they bring. Let's make sure every calf is a Jorgensen calf. Neighbor's bull didn't get in, whatever that looks like, and then there's a whole bunch of other riders that could add more value. Another $100 a head here, $50 a head here, $20 a head here. So all these other riders in this partnership, they're absolutely, I feel like, not just paying attention. How do we keep Jorgensen happy? We're same, just like you were talking. We want the people that we're buying these cattle from, because we're going to put them out there in the world they're the largest bull distributor in the country at 6,000 plus head of bulls. So they want to make sure that they're getting good quality stuff from people like me, but they also want to make sure that the guy out on the other end is getting really good quality stuff too. So they're
Yeah.
willing to pay for that and make that product as good as it can be so that their bull program stays reputable.
Yeah, I think it's a great partnership. And speaking of bulls, let's pivot to our last topic here: cow herd strategy. Retain, sell, or expand in today's high price environment. What are you doing? What's the moves?
All right. Ladder Ranch is, we talked about, why would you have wanted to be in this business 5 years ago? It wasn't the rosiest place to hang out. But I think we all have to be eternal optimists if we're going to be in the livestock industry and hoping that good times are around the corner. Here we are 5 years later. It was a long corner, but here we are. Short corner for those guys that have been doing this for 80 years. And so we built up our cow herd in that time, and it's working today. And we have all the way through this kind of bad turn where you needed to sell more calves so you made enough money to play again next year. We still were like, hey, we got to keep replacement heifers. We got to keep our herd going. And I feel the same way even in these great times. I'm not willing to let go of these heifers just because they're worth a bajillion dollars. I need to keep my herd going. And when this thing turns south, I don't want to have half my herd still because I let all those replacements go. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I should be thinking, well, why don't you just go buy the cows, Eamon? Everybody has good cows now. It used to be it was hard to find good cows. Now a lot of people have good cows. So in my view of the world, I want to keep my replacements because I know what they can do. I'm doing DNA testing on them. We just started that this last year, and we're going to try and keep building on that. So for me, it's more of a Ladder Ranch branded program. This is what we do. This is what we have, and I think it's something special. Just like where you're selling your cattle, Wineglass has a reputation, and you guys do it on purpose. It's not an accident what you're coming out with, and Ladder Ranch is the same way.
Yeah. So
What are you thinking on replacements? Because you guys are now in your 10-year yearling cycle. What are you guys thinking?
we, as many people know, we sold many thousands of bred animals over the last 2 years. We still have a core group of cows, and then we kept all of our heifers to retain. So we have the option to grow back to more than 1,000 next year, and we're also exposing a lot of quality heifers that we purchased. We're going to expose some of them to Jorgensen bulls, some of them to home raised bulls. We are positioning ourselves to be in any position, and we're gonna have to make that decision this fall. But we could go back into cow calf in a major way very quickly. We're also in a position where we could sell a lot more yearlings. We were buying heifers, quality heifers, through the winter, and we're in a kind of a unique position where we could go one of two ways, and we're not making that decision yet. But we're exposing three different groups of heifers: one group of home raised, one group of purchased, exposed to home raised bulls, and then of course the heifers that you have that are purchased, quality heifers exposed to Jorgensen. So we're trying to position ourselves to ride one of two waves, and fortunately we've got a few months to figure that out.
Yeah. So my next question, where you're talking about this, is so you guys have been on this 10-year cycle where you go yearlings 10 years, cow calf 10 years, and you're currently thinking maybe there's an opportunity to switch back in a couple years instead of doing the 10 years because yearlings have gotten so expensive. The premiums are not there for guys like you that can do this hopping back and forth. And maybe it's a good time we did well, we sold the pairs, but we kept enough cattle to rebuild quickly if we want to.
Yeah,
Is that what you're thinking?
the this time is different
Yeah.
crowd, is starting to weigh on me. And the nice thing is we sold some cows. We made some moves. We're in a good position financially, and just have some options. And truthfully, I'm listening to Don Close and thinking maybe this time is different. And I'm not willing to bet it big yet, but we did position ourselves so that if we wanted to bet big on this time is different, we can cash in on it.
Yeah, if we were ever to bring in a guest, I think those are the guys we've talked about. Who are the guys we should be asking questions to, and who are the guys we should be bending their ear? And I think we just got to keep going to the gray hairs because they've
Yeah.
seen a few things. And I think guys like Don Close, Daryl Peel, they're they're pretty knowledgeable. So that's very interesting that you would say that. One thing I'll say about your cattle and the heifers I got too is, and Chandler pointed my heifers out to me. Chandler's my main manager on the Ladder Ranch, and he said we've been bringing in all these heifers for several years, breeding them. He said we've really tried to get good quality cattle because we know we're selling them and we want to create a good product. Just like we were saying on our calf side, we want to have a good product and be reputable. So people say Ladder Ranch is selling heifers, we got to get some. And this isn't different. He said, but this is the nicest set of heifers that we've bought this year. And
Wow.
yeah, and I thought that was pretty neat because we bought some really nice heifers in the last several years, and I love hearing from people that have bought them and say, you know, those heifers really worked out for us. And I haven't heard from anybody that hasn't been satisfied with the heifers. And so for him to say that about mine, but I was looking at yours today as they're crossing the road in front of me, and I thought, this is, I think, maybe the nicest group that Logan sent me, and there are more reds in this group probably than any other group you've sent me.
Hmm.
And I don't know if that's because the market kind of had an opportunity for you to buy reds whatever day you were buying them along the way, but there's more reds, but boy, they're beautiful heifers. So and part of that is there's less operators, and the people that had crappy cattle aren't still in business today because they were selling an inferior product to other their neighbors or whoever it is. And I think that is showing through today in the cattle that you and I are buying because there's more opportunity. It's easier to buy really good cattle because that's all there is.
Yeah, I agree. Uh, so what does the before we wrap this up, because we're approaching an hour, the future of ladder, hanging on to more heifers, more cows, selling some bred heifers. What does the 2 to 3 year vision look like?
Well, this is a new idea. You and I talked about this the other day, and I was visiting with our good friend Craig Uden, and he was telling me how they do some basically profit sharing on cows. I'll just use that. I don't know if that's the correct term, but trying to help young people get in the business. And I still consider myself a young people in the business, but I definitely see there's opportunity for younger people that are hungry and out there, and I've got a few in mind that this might work for them. So we've got some older cows that I'd like to. I was before thinking of selling, good older bred cows this fall, and now I'm thinking, let's see what that number looks like in the fall. Let's see what the lates number looks like now that we've talked about this new app halter that we can now see. Should have less lates and less opens in my view. And can we do some sort of a share deal where I'm going to give these cattle to someone? I'm still going to own them. They're going to run them. They run them however they want to run them within reason. And 70% of that calf check goes to them. I still own them, so I get the value of the coal animal, of that coal cow that comes up open. And I also get 30% of the calf check, 15% of heifers, 15% of steers. So that's one opportunity that I'm looking into right now. And then I'm still thinking I want to grow my herd. 20% of a replacement crop grows a herd for Ladder Ranch. So that's my current plan is keep about 20%. And then rather than selling those older cows and lates, finding an opportunity that I can partner with somebody on them.
I like it. Partnership. It's key.
Yeah. And the cost to get into it, like we've been talking about, and the interest rates, they don't need to go to a bank to borrow the money to get these cows. I'm going to give them to them, and they're going to get 70% of a calf check.
Yeah, and if it loses value, it's on you. Other than the calf, but the cow, if it drops out,
But it incentivizes that person to run a clean operation and not do expensive things that don't make sense because all the outputs are on that person.
yeah, it's a partnership, and they
Yep.
gotta, they need to keep it even.
Right. What about you?
What? Let's wrap it up. Two things I want to hit on. I want to hear your biggest takeaway from today's conversation, and then one thing or two you want to hit on next week.
Um, I think, I'll just kind of go back through it. I thought the USDA numbers are telling. Very interesting to see where these numbers are going, and we'll follow that up. I think that there's going to be some LRP opportunities if we can break out of this oil conundrum we're in. I think that we're going to see a lot of market bumps, and there'll be different opportunities throughout that whole cycle. Um, we'll keep an eye on the drought next time. I think we just keep talking. Maybe in the next week, the whole country's gonna get a good shot of rain, and we'll be like, man, this thing's kind of flipping. Let's hopefully everybody can get a shot in the arm here and keep their summer rolling.
Yeah.
And yeah, what do you think?
Biggest takeaway for me, I'm watching the beef. I'm watching the beef complex backing up a little bit, a little concerning. That's what fuels this whole cattle industry is the beef. That's where the real consumer dollars enter. So I'm watching that. Also, this time is different. Maybe it isn't. What I want to hit on next time is the John Haskell interview with Barn Talk. I just started it. I think we're going to have a lot of conversation around that. And then the other thing I want to hit on is we were talking about the future. I'd like to hit on with you, what do you think the low is going to look like? What's feeder cattle going to hit? When is that going to hit? And how do you survive the next cycle low?
Yeah, I think that'd be great. Also, we'll probably be able to visit with everybody about Ladder Ranch, and some of our crew are going to head over to Wineglass Ranch and Maddox that have Ladder Ranch cows, and we're going to brand them here in a few days. So we're going to head out there and we'll probably
Record
have,
in person.
yeah,
I just remember that. Yeah, sweet.
yeah, we can do it in the afternoon. We'll get some branding done in the morning and do some recording in the afternoon.
All right, sounds good. Well, as always, Eamon, keep running on grass.
You too. Thank you, Logan.
Adios.